Hi, Dane Clement with Great Dane Graphics, a Group STAHLS company. I've been in the industry for close to 30 years now, and what we do at Great Dane is we create full color, high-end artwork for the apparel decorating industry. Now, we also create vinyl cutting artwork, which we optimize and make sure that it's easy to weed, right? That there's not too many small cavities and lines aren't too thin, and that there's no cross cuts, that kind of thing. So we create custom files for that. We create regular black line clip art style artwork as well. Basically, we create artwork for any decorating technique in our industry. I've written 6 books, training books, right? Artwork for vinyl cutting in both Adobe and Corel Draw versions, artwork for DTG printing, artwork for white toner transfer printing, and right now I'm in the middle of one for artwork for dye sublimation. In this class today, what we're going to do is we're going to cover how to create mock-ups, right? So if you have a customer, you want to show them what it's going to look like on a product, either hard good or soft good. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'll show you how to, create your own from scratch, that sort of thing. So, it's a 3-part class. What we're going to do is we're going to have our first part's we'll take a picture of a photo of a mug, and we'll work with that. We'll create, some other stuff with some t-shirts and maybe a throw pillow with some texture, things like that. So, let's get to it. All right, so what I did is I just have an open file here. I opened a photograph of a mug, and we're going to take this mug out of this background. It's literally just shot on a table and, nothing special, right? If you wanted to, you could put a white background behind it, a colored background, whatever, black or something. It doesn't really matter. So all we're doing is we're going to focus. We're going to isolate that mug and take it out. So we're going to do this. It's going to go down to my pen tool, and as long as my at the very top here is set to path will be good. If it's set to shape, it's going to want to fill in with my foreground color and that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to zoom in and just find a starting point. So I'm just going to click here. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to drag my mouse to kind of follow along that shape. If I hold my space bar, I get this flat pan hand here. So I'm going to do that, and then again, pull it out and follow along and do the same thing here. Right? Now watch what happens. I need to make this turn or this curve. And if I do that, if I come here, look how far out my line came, right? So anytime you go into a node with a curve, it wants to come out of that node with another curve. So that's actually too strong. So, I can grab this line and go back in it, but what I'm going to do is I just Command Z or Control Z it. So now if I just hold my Option key or the Alt key on your PC and click on this node, that handle, that Bezier handle, goes back inside itself. So now I can change directions. I can go straight this way if I want in a straight line like that, right? It's not coming out in a turn anymore because we pushed that handle back. So I'm going to Command Z that, and I'm just going to continue on. I'm going to drag it around. So the reason I wanted to show you that is because that is a really, really useful tool that you're going to find yourself using a lot when you want to change directions on things. So as long as you click your mouse while your mouse is held down and pull those handles out, you can control that curve, right? You can make adjustments. Now I'm just holding my Command key or the Control key on your PC to grab that handle and move it. I'm going to come down here and click again, and I'll push it out. Just click and move your mouse. Now I know this is still a curve, right? But you can't predict how it's going to work. So if I just hold my Option key again and click on it, I can push it back. And I'll do this. I'll just keep going around this guy, doing that same thing. Come around here, hold my Option key and click. Now there's other tools we could use to do this, but I got to say, if my product or my whatever I'm working on, right, if it has a hard edge to it, my go-to thing to work with is the pen tool, because a couple of reasons. One, it's super clean. I can zoom in and out and get as detailed as I want, right? I can save it, and then I always have it moving forward. So I'm going to kind of click on this and just pull it, make it a little bit tighter here. All right, so almost done there. Got to get the inside of this handle. So I'll do that, come over here and just keep clicking, right? Just start a new path and gonna go around it. Just like when you draw a circle or an oval, you really only need 4 points, center, top, and 2 sides. So the fewer points you work with, the smoother your path will be. Hold my Option or the Alt key there again and change that direction. Do like this. Do the same thing again here. I'm going to come up to this part, and then we'll connect them. All right, so I'm going to zoom in, or zoom out rather, and then go to my paths palette. You see it says outline path, so I can click off of it. If I double click the name, now I can go ahead and just type it whatever we want, hit OK. So now that path is there forever, right? It will always be in my document, which is handy because we can use it. If we need to use it again, we can come back to it and use it again. So if I select the path here by just clicking on it once, and at the bottom of the path tool, there's this little dotted line. It says load path as a selection. Well, if I click that, there it is. Now it's selected my image. So I'm going to go to my layers panel here. So now if I hit Command J on my Mac or Control J on your PC, look what happens. It takes that selection and puts it on its own layer, right? Which is great. So now all we need to do is work with it a little bit. So we pulled it off the background. I'm going to turn my background on again. Now what this is it's literally just stuck on a table with a cabinet thing behind it. I didn't take any care or any time or any fanciness to it. I literally just took a picture. Turn the background off. So you can see it's got some color contamination kind of going in it. So a way to compensate for that or fix that is to do this. We're going to go to the edit menu. Image menu, adjustments, and go to hue saturation. Anytime I work with color, this is the first thing I'm going to do is to go to this window. So what I want to do is, it's a white mug, right? So I'm just going to take the saturation out of it. So look at my image. Now there's no color in my image. It's all grays, which is awesome. I'm going to hit OK to that. And the next thing I might want to do is a little dark. So I don't want it to look dingy, but I want it to look nice. So if I go to back up to image adjustments, and this is what I call Photoshop's Corvette engine, by the way, and we just open the hood on it. So I'm looking for my levels at this point, right? This histogram shows us where the color data is in my file. So if you look at this grayscale bar, right? Here's my blacks, here's my highlights, and here's my midtones. So what I want to do is grab this midtone slider and move it. But you see what happens. If I move it towards the highlight, then it gets dark. If I move it towards the shadow, then it gets lighter. So I'm just want to lighten it up a little bit. And I can take my highlights and squeeze it in just a touch and just kind of work with it until I get something that I think looks good. I think that looks good. I can still see some good definition to it, so I think that it works. I'm going to hit OK. But right now, the image is basically off. All right. One other thing I want to do is I want to make it look like it's sitting on a table, right? So it's got a natural grounding thing to it. So let's create a new layer. Put it underneath that one, right? And I'm going to look at my foreground color as black. If I hit my X, black and white. So if I hit my D key, that means if I would have had a green in there, it would have went to black and white like you see it now. If I hit the X key, though, at this point, it exchanges those two colors, my foreground color and my background color. So now if I hit Option Delete on my keyboard or Alt Backspace on your PC, it's just going to fill that background with whatever that color is on your foreground color. Or I can go to the Edit Fill menu or come over to the Paint Bucket tool and do it that way. But that's my go-to, my Option Delete or Alt Backspace. Okay, so this is looking pretty cool. Now watch, if I select my mug itself and come down to Effects, right, and go ahead and add a drop shadow. So I want to put a drop shadow on it. Here's the problem with when you do it this way. It wants to add a drop shadow everywhere. Now it's going to the top because maybe my distance is too strong. My size is way too big. But even when I bring it in, look what's going on. It's making it come underneath here and on the side here. Well, obviously that's not natural. That's okay if I have my mug laid down on the table and I'm shooting this way, obviously, but that's not, for something like this, that's not really a realistic, a believable situation. So we're not going to do it that way. I'm going to go ahead and cancel it out. So I'm going to create a new layer, right? I'm going to put it underneath my mug. And then now I'm going to come over here to grab my ellipse tool, marquee tool, and I'm going to just click and drag and ellipse, which is pretty close to the size of my mug, right? So now if I hit my D key to get my foreground color back to black, and again, hit my Option Delete or Alt Backspace, if I turn off my mug layer, you can see we got it there. So now I'm going to, while my marching ants are going on, if I go to the Select menu and I come down and deselect, turn my mug back on, and with my arrow keys, I'll just kind of nudge it. Oh, I'm going to hit my V key first, get my move tool here. Now with my arrow keys, I can nudge my shadow down, right? Like that. That's pretty cool. All right. Now with my shadow layer selected, if I come up to my filter menu, come down to blur, and I go to Gaussian blur, we can adjust the size here. And I don't want to do it too big because I want it to look kind of believable, like it's sitting on a table or something, right? It might even be too far down. It's definitely too dark. We'll fix that in a second. I'm gonna hit OK. My move tool is still selected. So now if I nudge it up a bit, that looks pretty good. Now go to my opacity on that layer and cut it back to get something that looks believable. So if you took a mug and put it on a table, that's kind of what it would look like, right? That looks way better. All right, so let's do this. Let's go ahead and open up an image. So I'm gonna go to File, Open, and we'll pull this guy in, right? Now, when I get an image in, notice it came in as its own tab here at the top. So if I grab this tab and drag it down, okay, and just let it go, it's going to have two different windows. So now in my layers, you can see my image. So if I click on it and drag it out and let it go, this is just telling me that my source file, this artwork file, is a different profile, color profile, because I just opened the JPEG and worked with this mug. I didn't set a color profile. So that's fine. Just hit OK. And I'm going to zoom out. Now, if I go to Edit menu, Free Transform, right, you'll see these binding boxes. So hold my Option key or the Alt key, and you can move it from the center, right? Now I can move it over here, kind of zoom in a little bit, make it a little bit smaller, right? Okay, so if I double click inside it to set it. All right, so my image is placed. A couple more things we need to do to make it look like it belongs there, because it still looks like we just stuck it there. So let's do this. Let's go to the Edit menu, come down to Transform, and we'll go to Warp. So now what I can do is click in my image and start dragging around a little bit. And I'm trying to make the bottom line follow the contours of the bottom line of my mug, right? So it looks like it's on there printed. And just kind of take short, small adjustments at first. You don't want to go too crazy because then it's just harder to work with. So small adjustments like this. I can see this part looks a little too elongated maybe now. So because I've been moving the bottom, now I just got to move the top a little bit. That looks pretty good. So if I double click it, or actually just go ahead and click off of it, right? That looks good. So let's maybe raise it up a little bit. And I'm going to distort it a little bit. So now I'm going to Edit menu again, come down to Transform, and let's go to Distort. What I want to do now is just kind of squeeze in the sides to get the square box of my shape to more mimic the curvature or the angles of the mug, right? Like this. All right. Double click inside to set it. That looks pretty cool. Now, a couple more things I want to do. In my layer here, if I change my mode from normal to multiply, I want you to look at the whites in here, right? So I'm going to Command Z that. See that? So when I use bright white on my artwork, it might not match the white in the surrounding areas of my art. So what multiply does is it uses the white from the layer beneath it that it's going to come through, right? So that's much more believable. Plus it has the little texture, not textures, but kind of like, I guess textures, right? It's got the look of the mug underneath there. So now all I want to do is add a little shadow to this side and maybe a little highlight. So we're going to do this. We're going to create a new layer above the artwork layer. I'm going to hold my Command key or the Control key, and I'm going to click on my preview icon of my artwork. Now I have my marching ants around just the art. So now if I go to the View menu, and I can hide my extras. See that Command H or Control H? If I do that, it's still selected, but it's hidden, right? It hides those marching ants because it's too distracting. So now if I hit my B key to get my brush tool, I want to make sure I have a soft edge brush. And my foreground color is set to black. I'm going to make a much larger brush like this. And my opacity is really low. You want to set it, 10%-ish. And I'm going to click my brush and then hold my shift key and then bring it down, right? I'm going to do that to both sides just to kind of give that illusion of that contour. And then now if I hit my X key, get my white as my foreground color, make my brush a little smaller. And if I look here where the bright highlight is, I can come in like this and click there, come straight down and click again. I'm going to make a second little one right here to kind of mimic these two little rows, right? So I can click right there, hold my shift key. And what the shift key is doing is putting it in a straight line, basically. So again, I could do it again if I wanted to, just so you can see it a little bit more. Make this one about the size of that, and then come down and do the same thing. So that's a pretty good, believable mug, if you ask me. So right now, what if I wanted to, I could save it as a PNG or whatever and send it to the customer and see if we can get the business. All right, there you go.